I'd like to call this November 19th Ambulance Subcommittee meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move on to a roll call.
Alex Bedbitt.
Here.
Pat Kilstone.
Here.
Rick Smith.
Here.
Laura Berry is excused. Judy Freeze. Here. Pam Kajak. Here. Terry Lewis Burkett. Here.
Okay, we'll move on to item 2, public comment. Did anyone submit any public comments?
No.
Anyone there? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 3, approval of minutes for the October 23rd subcommittee meeting.
Also move we approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, well, we have a motion. I'll let Judy be the second. We have a motion by Rick, a second by Judy to approve the October 23rd ambulance subcommittee meeting minutes as written. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to item 4A, old business, discussion and possible action, 2025 ambulance referendum question. This is kind of a follow-up here that I wanted to bring up because I know our original motion was to request attorney access to draft this question. The village board did not take us up on that, nor did the village president. Various reasons. I think one of them being that the legal fund is basically down to $88, so there isn't any money for an attorney at this time. So we basically are back to drafting the question without any legal guidance at this time. So I included, or I requested the kind of handbook. I don't know if anyone read the packet about referendum.
I read through
Questions in
it.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that doesn't pertain, and it's good for information that we had it. But a lot of it, you know, we're not looking at a statewide referendum or what a ballot measure. We're not looking at statewide advisory planning petition. It's all, and the towns cannot do it, so we're not looking at that. It's very limited to what we're looking at. I think page 13 of 35, I think that pretty much covers it. But I tell you, I'm a little concerned if we don't have the legal budget to work on this. I hate to throw my arm and just say, you know, let's just forget it. But I'm disgusted, discouraged, whatever, disenchanted, whatever you want to, term you want to put on it. I'm just wondering, I don't want to sound real negative, but the board is in, I don't know what the term even, disarray. I mean, whatever we give them. I was at last board meeting, I asked them if they've seen any of these packets, and none of them have even looked at them. They don't have a clue what we're doing. So, should we be going back? If there's no money though, we can't even, what did we want to do? Yeah, the advisory referendum, we don't even have money to work on that. Where do we go from here? You know, I'm really concerned that, and I tell you, I think it would be great if we did have our own ambulance, but I'm just concerned that we're up here banging our heads against the wall, and the only thing that's going to feel as good is when we stop.
See, the other thing that we kind of lean toward, they take away from us.
Yeah.
So why even have this committee? Truthfully, that's how I feel.
I don't, I apologize for sounding negative on it, but I wonder, do we want to proceed on it and just keep stumbling? I mean, I'll stick it out until we decide that, hey, we're not going to go for it. But it doesn't make sense.
I mean, I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, I didn't vote no on anything the committee recommended.
No, I know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you know, the board, I have to agree there. It's been one step forward, two steps back along the way. However, I do want to note a couple things. You know,
I have a question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
On page 12, it says the board must then file the ballot measure with a proper official in charge of preparing the ballots for the election. Who is that proper person?
In this village, it was the clerk.
It would be the clerk. There's a page back that says, well, and now you don't even have clerk.
Right. Good question. I mean, my perspective, you can't even make this up these days. But, I mean, I don't mean to sound callous with that statement or to laugh, but it's really not funny. It's more, I'm just as frustrated, I'll be honest.
Right, everything we say is not taken under consideration at all.
I mean, and I know that's kind of another item here in this packet, but it's where do we go from here, right? The village board right now is paralyzed. We have a lot going on, and it's hard to make sense of it. You know, you'll see item 5A, you know, it's not this item, so I don't want to talk too much about it yet. RFP for ambulance services. Right, this ambulance committee, us even discussing a possible, you know, ambulance service does give us some leverage in, I don't know how you would put it, but it allows us to perhaps improve our current contract somehow if we can get it for a year. I do agree, though, that I think it's probably, you know, next to impossible to implement this for 2026 at this point. I mean, we have a year. I mean, but that's something we can look at. I also don't think it's unreasonable to have a referendum on whether people want ambulance service, especially an advisory referendum. I mean, if it has to be a 2027 implementation date, you know, that is what it is. Frankly, in my opinion, I don't know how we can go forward on this until the election. I mean, I wish I could put it simpler than that.
The other question I had, I don't know, there was something that, I know with the ambulance contracts, we wanted to, not necessarily this board review, but a third party review. And I don't see, I remember reading it, I don't see where. But anyway, are we still looking at a third party review being this ambulance subcommittee or somebody else, or I hate to even suggest John Small, because from what I've seen and heard from him, well, that's interesting. I would rather have somebody impartial do the review.
We decided that we wanted
Yeah.
reality in this.
I would agree with that. I mean, that is something we can definitely do. I know this specific agenda kind of made a little bit more condensed because we had other things we need before that third-party review anyway, like the RFP, to know what our true alternatives are. And also, you know, frankly, I don't know, moving forward on a third-party review, I would agree James Small is not an independent resource at this point. Right, his statements and interaction with members of the public. I don't think that would be proper for anybody involved. I think that's something we could look at next meeting, is the scope of what we want for a third-party review. But the reason why I was kind of putting this as a top priority for the ambulance referendum question is, all of the actual question has to be ready because, let's see, April 1st is the election, I believe. So you have to get it 70 days ahead of time. It needs to be complete by January 22nd, 2025. So we don't really have time to sit back and wait for if the board decides to allocate legal money for an attorney anymore, or whether the interim administrator / village president will authorize the attorney use of this committee. So that's why I kind of wanted to include some examples of referendum questions, take a shot at it, and have it maybe be reviewed by an attorney if funds are approved. But
It wouldn't be ready in 26, so, correct? I mean, how can it be?
Yeah. I think it would have to be for 2027 at this point. But what we can do is for 2026 also, and that's the next agenda item, is get an RFP out there for ambulance services so we can get what we want in terms of improvements to our ambulance contract for looking for another year, waiting on the results of the referendum. If the referendum passes, then I think that gives a lot of guidance to elected officials. At the same time, a lot of people will be up for a re-election. So, who knows what will happen there. If it passes, I think that gives strong credibility. We need to be, as a village, moving full steam ahead for a 2027 ambulance service implementation date. If it fails, well, we've been working on RFP for contracted services. And if the will of the people says no, then, then we look at a longer term contract at that point.
I know one of them was for a 5-year contract. Yeah, Riverside was for 5 years.
But again, that's just extending our existing contract. So
Right.
that was part of what the fire chief has brought up repeatedly, is that there are improvements that really should be done to the contract. In order to do that, we need to go to RFP.
Alex, I'm kind of wondering if, due to the environment that we're in, the political environment, the financial environment of the village, if we shouldn't maybe just kind of slow walk the whole thing. I think the committee should continue. I think we should do a really good job of researching the costs, the financial impact to the village. What a vehicle is going to cost, what the staffing is going to be, what that's going to cost. Really do a complete job, take our time, make sure everything is right, and then maybe shoot for the 27 implementation. Like I said, the political environment in the village right now is just in turmoil. It's going to be hard to get, and there's been a lot of public opposition already, so it's going to be very difficult to get this thing to progress. So I think we should continue to do our job and just come up with the absolute best proposal that we can. And then when the referendum is presented to the public, have a very complete and an informative session with the public, go through every stage of the service, and then present it for referendum. But take our time and do it right.
I think I would agree with that. I mean, at this point with our political climate, 2026 is not feasible at this point. Right? It's just not. I mean, even if we had full support right away,
Yeah, we still,
You know, we lost our long lead time ambulance, right? I mean, that was shut down a few times. So I tend to agree with Pat fully. My only question is, yeah, crafting the proposal, doing our work, that's all well and good. For the referendum itself, though, what were you envisioning with that? Are you still envisioning an April 25 referendum?
No, and I think, you know, there'll be an election in spring of next year. There'll be an election in fall of next year. There'll be an election.
I don't believe there will be a fall.
Aren't the county offices next fall?
No.
Well, then we would just wait till the following spring.
26?
Right.
But
I
then,
mean-
then that kind of leaves us where we're at now.
I'm not following what you mean. I mean, by spring of, no, that
it would
would
actually be
It
27.
would be 27, the spring of 27.
okay, this coming spring is 25. The following spring would be 26, correct? With a 27 implementation. So that would work, I think, logically, right?
Right.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking in my head, right? I mean, you have to get a lot of your ducks in a row ahead of time, like with the equipment ordered and the staffing and the.
Well,
You
that's
can have
what
the
I'm,
best proposal in the world, but then you're leaving yourself 7 months to implement, based on the referendum question.
but that gives time for the budgeting process of the village. I mean, there's a lot of factors that are gonna be working simultaneously. So again, I think the slow approach is the best, and make sure we have the absolute correct numbers, and then write the question which reflect those numbers. You know, should the village adopt a service that costs X, whatever that number is, and see what happens.
My question was with, about the levy limits. Can we state in there, that's why we needed legal help. Can we state that in the beginning it will be 300,000 divided up the first year amongst all the residents, okay? And then the next year it would go down because we're not buying an ambulance right away, okay? Can you do measurable levies? I'm frankly, I don't understand. I don't know, but it's like the kids asking for a bigger allowance to buy our car. Well, that's what we're doing. We're asking for a big allowance in the beginning to buy the car, and then after that we have to maintain, but, go from there. And I think that people need to understand that too. So, am I right? Am I wrong? I'm new in this game, okay guys, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, the referendum game is definitely new for me on this, right? I mean, I don't know if we're necessarily asking to exceed the levy limit either, though.
Well, I don't know what the,
Because,
yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's kind of the complexity of why we were in our financial issue right now, is those levy limits are on the general fund. Well, that's the biggest, most strict portion of your tax bill that is impacted by what's called a levy limit,
Right, and then how did they get the water,
the water thing.
right? Did they add more, the taxes went up for water?
No, that was the sanitary sewer district.
Okay,
Because they couldn't tax everyone in the village the same rate as sanitary sewer district. So that was, I don't know if it was just assessment or if it's a tax on the district. I don't
yeah,
recall.
I don't,
Because with this, I think that's where it was kind of getting in between, is that binding versus advisory. Is the advisory, right, we're asking for the public's input on taking on the capital cost of it. We're not necessarily asking to exceed the levy limit, because
okay,
the board could, without referendum, right, take on debt, add it to the debt levy to fund the upfront cost of
yeah,
the ambulance. Like, there's not a need for a referendum. It's when you want to exceed your levy limit that you have to have a referendum. You know, which in theory they could do anyway just for operating costs in the village. You see it a lot with school districts too, whenever they do it. But
How are we going to project an increase in the cost of the ambulance? Because you can't tell me that 2 years, 3 years down the road, it's going to be what we can quote it. It's not going to happen. We know it's going to increase.
I'm not an expert on municipal finance, but we have a debt fund, correct?
correct.
And that's where this expense would go.
Correct.
Purchasing the vehicle, the equipment, and everything would go into the debt fund. Where the village itself is gonna be almost debt-free in about 2.5, 3 years, right?
2028, about 5/6 of our debt, or about 85% of our debt matures.
All right, so then, again, you craft a question, the referendum question, knowing what our debt obligation is going to be reduced, that we do have room in the debt fund, and that's how you present it to the public. And so then the cost really would be, the levy itself might actually go down, because right now we're carrying a large amount of debt. Then you reduce that amount of debt, which then impacts the levy and reduces the levy. So, that's why we need time to figure this all out. And maybe in the interim, we'll have an administrator. There's a guy or a person that could help us in this type of, with our questions and answers and how to construct this. Hopefully somebody that has experience, or we'll have an experienced financial person, finance director. There again, we could possibly get some help. So again, go slow, get our numbers right, and shoot for maybe 27.
Yeah, you have it right? The long-term village needs to be looking at levelizing our total levy, because we have a lot of debt retiring in 2028. We also know our general fund's in rough shape. We know that this proposal, the goal of it financially is to improve the situation of that general fund. The way we're set up right now, it's going to swing a bunch year by year if we go year by year with our planning. It's not just related to the ambulance. The ambulance is one piece of that puzzle. So, yeah, I guess that's the question for the committee. How do we want to handle this referendum, knowing it's unlikely to go in 26? I also want to make sure if we do a 27 implementation date that we have enough time to implement it if it is going to referendum. So, I don't know what people think about that.
So another reason why we should get these RFPs in, and if not us, somebody review them. Because if we lock into a 5-year contract, which I see in one of them, not the other one, they're proposing 26 to 30. So a 5-year contract. We have to be sure that if we lock into that contract, we're not held responsible if we get out in 3 years. No, hey, we bought a new ambulance, we bought supplies, we have men trained up, running, so you guys backed out of your contract, now you're gonna pay for that. So just one more reason why somebody with more knowledge than me has to review the RFP, right?
Well, the current, just as an example, the current contract, I think, has a 90-day opt-out. Is that correct, Alexa?
Which contract?
The one we have with Riverside.
The one with Riverside. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I saw that on there.
So, as long as we have that type of language in the new contract, that either party can vacate the contract in X amount of notice, then we're protected.
Then we're covered.
Well, yeah, absolutely, anything we do. But, again, I think that's kind of more agenda item 5A, what we want to do with that. I agree with all these points being made on the RFP. But I just wanted to clarify, this item is about the referendum and how we want to approach that, because the committee's direction was basically to take the leadership on drafting an ambulance referendum question for April 2025.
You're talking about the financial analysis?
No, I'm talking about the item we're on the agenda.
Okay.
The referendum, the financial analysis, absolutely. I mean, to get everything done, I would agree that we need some time. We want the best proposal possible, but
You know, there's got to be other people around that could help us walk through this, like, what was his name? I'm sorry, Dan Kimmelberger? That evidently we were supposed to do a feasibility study. And of course, James Small volunteered his services, but there must be other people out there that could do this for us. And I know it isn't going to be a freebie, but there's got to be somebody who is more familiar with our community instead of, I don't even know where Dan is from, something down around Madison, Milwaukee. I don't know where.
well, he's just a member of the public.
Right. But he was, the back and forth here, he volunteered his services and he's supposed to buy you can't do it based on just one person. If the body would request it, there must be somebody out there that does these studies.
Well, I think, yeah, that's something we can discuss more, but, you know, again, I'm just trying to keep it focused on the agenda item here, which is
Sorry.
what do we want to do with the referendum right now? I agree, we have agreement that we want the best proposal possible. I mean, I think we're in agreement that there's a strong.
We don't know how to do that?
Well,
Exactly,
Well,
and that's what I was sort of getting at.
Yeah.
But then there's a strong headwind into implementing an ambulance service for 2026. But again, we also have to kind of come up with a decision on what we want to do regarding the referendum first, because that's the shortest lead time thing we need to get done if we want to get a 2025 referendum. What does the committee think about that? Like, do they want input from the community that they want an ambulance service ahead of finishing the feasibility study or not?
Well, I think it's almost a catch-22. We can't really ask the public because the first question they're gonna ask, what's it gonna cost?
Exactly, yeah.
So I think I think we should, how can I say this? I think as far as the referendum, we should say, yes, we're going to have a referendum at some point in the future, once we have a very definite cost figure. I mean, so you know, we have to do the financial research in order to come up with the question.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I see it.
I think it makes
Because,
sense.
you know, do you want to buy a new car? Well, what's it going to cost? Well, do you want to buy a car? Well, yeah, I want to buy a car. Well, what's it going to cost? You know.
But I think that Chief did a lot of work on what it is going to cost, what it would cost now, okay? And in 2 years, it's going to be a different story. So I think that we do have the information on what it's going to cost, okay? Maybe some of them, maybe like the salary is underestimated a tad, okay? But on the most part, I think she did a good job on, you know, getting the figures out there.
Right.
So I I think we have figures to give people, but if we can't get the ambulance this year, well, that will change, and that's a big budget issue.
Well, not to nitpick, but I think we have general ideas. I think the department, the chief, has to come up with a very definite staffing plan. This is what the plan's gonna be. So many people during the day, so many people on call, whatever, at such a wage. I mean, we have to have those numbers correct. So, I mean, up to this point, well, maybe we'll do it this way, maybe we'll do it that way. But I think we need a real definite staffing plan. As far as the vehicle, we can have a pretty good idea from the dealer. You know, it costs this much now, and I'm anticipating a 10% increase or whatever. I mean, we can get, I think, really close as long as we do our homework.
Well, I thought it was 2 people on full-time, part-time.
Right, but how much, you know, at what wage, is how many hours?
At about $20 an hour for the EMTAs, advanced. Okay, and then at night, it would be on-call people. Just
At
like
what
the
wage?
firefighters are on call.
I mean, but we have to have all those numbers exact, right?
Well, how can you have exact numbers? We don't know how many fires we're gonna have, we don't know how many ambulance calls we're gonna have.
Right, but I mean,
So-
you have to construct a budget.
Right,
You know, this is what we think it's gonna be.
right.
Yeah,
And
you'd
I
have
think
to
she
base,
did a good job.
yeah, she did a fantastic job. You'd have to base it off of the calls the previous year or
Right.
back 5 years, and what has it increased?
Right.
And you're gonna have, what did I see, 400 calls? You're gonna have 400 calls. Last year you had 200, this year you had 400. Next year you're gonna have 600 or 800. You can't project that far ahead, but you know it's gonna increase because your population is going up. So,
And we're getting older.
yeah. So, I think we could project it well enough to get real close to what it's gonna cost. And I think the discrepancy was what it was gonna be the part-time or the people staying in the station that was below minimum wage. And you can't, I
No,
think that was.
I think that was like eliminated.
Yeah, I think that towards the end, that was eliminated. I agree. But I think that was the discrepancy to start. Well, Kim and Alexa aren't gonna sit in that station for $2.50 an hour and, you know, wash trucks or clean hoses or whatever. And it doesn't make much sense for them to sit there and do nothing. You know, so you have to, and I agree, I think she did eliminate that in the next go around. But yeah, I agree, we have to get numbers as rock solid as we can on the equipment and everything. And I think if we talk to a dealer, they will know that ambulance, we're gonna sell you
Well,
a year ago for $378,000, now it's going up 3% or 10% or 20%, they know.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so for an example of a question, under state law, an increase in the levy of the Village of Howard for the tax to be imposed for the next fiscal year, 2024 is limited to 2%, which results in a levy of approximately $8,208,200. Shall the Village of Howard be allowed to exceed this limit and increase the levy for the next fiscal year, 2024, for the purpose of additional police and fire protection and rescue ambulance services by a total of 9.3%, which would result in a levy of $8,973,200, and on an ongoing basis, including the increase of $765,000 for each fiscal year going forward. So we're not needing to ask for the operating costs at all, because the proposal is supposed to lower the amount of general fund expended. We're not requesting to increase our levy limit at all in terms of operating costs. So if we're talking about the staffing plan, it's not really part of what the referendum has to be. But if you had concrete numbers on what improvement that might do to the general fund, then that's It'd just be additional information in the question. But we're basically only allowed to ask for is, it's an advisory referendum, is input on expending the capital costs of the ambulance. So, I mean, we're basically asking, in Chief O'Brien's proposal, right, she was wanting $710,100, correct? I think that's what it was. Correct me if I'm wrong in the proposal.
Yeah, that sounds real close to what it was.
Now, obviously, there's informational sessions too that go into it. You know, Jennifer, I think I sent you a copy of the Village of Howard one.
I sent it, I emailed it to everybody just
Oh,
now.
oh, okay. People have their email or computer, but there's basically like this handout here that they gave out, this pamphlet to their residents with all the facts. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is we don't necessarily need every penny accounted for the referendum itself. But the more information we do have on operating only helps inform the public of what is being asked. So kind of go both ways.
Well, I put that handout in there.
Oh yeah, that was for Donia, yeah. I guess that's kind of what I was asking of the committee. What level of information does the committee feel comfortable needing to even ask about the capital costs? I think we have good numbers for the capital costs.
Yeah, I think those numbers are good and solid, but I think, like Patrick brought up, we're gonna get questioned, you know, how much is this gonna cost? You know, what are the wages, what is it for additional staffing?
What does this mean for my taxes?
Exactly.
I mean, I can envision a public meeting where we're going through the numbers and some member of the public is gonna say, well, what about overtime costs? What about social security costs? What about if somebody goes over their hour limit and we have to pay benefits? I mean, those are the questions that you're gonna get at the meeting. So those are the answers you better have.
Right.
Because you can't sit up there and say, well, we think it might be. You can't say that.
Well, you have to say that because you don't know.
No,
You don't know what the overtime will be, you don't know what, and if that person is needed for additional time, then they deserve to get time.
That's
know.
why you construct the budget. You say, our budget is this is what we have for overtime.
Right.
This is what we have for social security.
Or is it comp time instead of overtime?
Whatever,
So,
but I think it's gotta be pretty definite.
well, and everybody should always remember, how would you go to work for that? And would you go to work if you weren't gonna get social security paid? You know, so it's part of being employed.
But so that just solidifies his comment that we have to know that.
Yeah.
So if we have 10 employees and we have to pay, well, we gotta pay social security on all of them, but retirement system, if you gotta pay on that, that's additional cost. You know, the overtime, we can't judge how much overtime they get, but we can certainly judge what we pay for overtime.
Right.
Approximate it or build a budget, like you said.
Yeah.
The board isn't going to help us get the people to come in and help us that get the right answers.
I don't think it's feasible for 70 days. Maybe next year. For 26, no, for 27 implementation. Is that correct, Pam?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to have the question on the ballot or ready for the ballot at least 70 days prior to the election, which is January. It's April 1st is the election, so January 22nd, friends? January 21st. So the question and all the aspects of it would have to be approved, yeah, by January 21st, by my calculations. So, Like we basically have 2 months to even get the question written and approved by the board.
They have to approve it.
Yeah, they would.
That won't be.
Yeah, because we don't have the authority to put a question on.
Right.
They do.
Only they do, yes.
So they would have to approve it. And I don't know the process, but you have 60 days to get them.
Yeah, it has to be the wording.
Yeah. Once the initiative process begins, the circulation of the petition, you have 60 days to get enough qualified electors to sign the petition. And I know there's 2 different amounts in here. One says 15%, one says 25%. Of the people that voted in the last governor's election, 15% of the village. So if you had, I'll keep it simple for me, if you had 100 people, 50 people signed the petition. It's just a petition whether or not you want to pursue ambulance service or, the petition doesn't have to word what the ballot is, what the referendum is.
You're saying for the public to force a referendum.
You need petition, or signatures. You can't just come to the board and say, hey, put that on. You need signatures for that.
Well, I believe the municipality can go to referendum if they vote on it, but is that, what are you referring for the public to force this instead of the board?
Well, yeah, it's on page 13. The ballot initiative process begins with circulation of petition.
Yeah, but I think that's for direct legislation, correct?
That's for direct legislation.
That'd be like if you had a bunch of people in the community that wanted to get something for referendum. But I think the board can still force or get a referendum for these types of things. But the point is, you need 70 days ahead of time.
Yeah, then you need 70 days after that, right.
You still need 70 days because this is from the Marathon County, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, basically from the county clerk's office, they need the question and the wording ready for printing ballots 70 days ahead of the election time frame.
But does anyone here think the board's gonna put that on referendum?
Well, we would have to draft a question tonight, send it to the board. If they don't like it, if they know, send it back. If there's any revisions, I think there isn't. What I'm saying is there's not much time to get it ready.
No, I don't think we have time to do it for April. I really don't. Because if we draft a question tonight, get it to the board, they're not gonna have a special board meeting to discuss that referendum or that question.
Members won't show up.
Yeah,
We don't have a clerk.
yeah. So it certainly isn't gonna happen. Like, I mean, I agree with Pat. We can just take baby steps and keep moving forward and get it prepared the best we can.
I would tend. So what is the committee's goal for a referendum? What is our goal date? I think we can set that. We have a motion on it. So I don't want to speak for the committee. I just.
When will they have capital to give us an attorney?
who knows, we'd have to pass a budget amendment, because there's $88 left, and I think there's thousands in illegal expenses still to pay, so. Probably December,
If you're lucky.
probably next budget year, to be honest.
Because we all pay our taxes pretty.
If we get a tax bill at all,
Yeah.
Maybe we won't.
we don't have a treasurer, we don't have a clerk. Who's gonna take care of that?
Right.
You got big shoulders there, girl?
We'll take care of it. You'll get your tax bill.
Well, thanks.
Alex, what's in the next year's budget for legal services?
Well, we haven't adopted the budget yet.
I
so
know it's coming up, I mean, what's the proposal?
I want to say it was, well, let me pull it up.
Even if we get a petition, they still have 60 days to check with the signatures.
Trying to
Everything works over your signature.
get to it. So you had some update meetings, let's take a look. Legal. Of course, it's not searchable.
Just feel it.
Trying to find it.
I mean, we're back to the regular, or the normal budget numbers, 10 or 15,000, whatever it was, something like that.
I think that's what was budgeted. Oh, here, $30,000.
Oh, 30, okay.
Right now. But we've already expended 120,000 through October, so. Not even through October, I don't think. I still think we have to pay October's expenses. So, I guess what I'm hearing from this is that the committee thinks we need to not put this on this April's ballot because we're not ready or there's more information you want.
I don't know how we would put it on April. My thought.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said earlier, I think the environment is not right at the present time.
So is that a motion? Recommend that this be delayed?
I'm just trying to think how you would word it. You're saying, so when should we do the referendum? Is that what you're asking? I would say that we,
Well, what should the committee recommend to the board regarding the referendum because it was directed to draft the question for the April 25 ballot? So I'm saying, like, what should the committee's official response be?
I would say something along the order that the committee recommends a referendum, but not until we have the complete financial impact on the levy, or however you want to word it.
There's more than just the financial aspect.
Right,
We need to know how to legally do this.
We legally write it, and that is not an option for us right now.
So what motion did you make?
I agree with part of it, but how do you,
Yeah, it's a complicated,
Yeah, it is a complicated motion, I know that, but.
Motion because we were refused legal advice for verbiage in the referendum.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why. It's not anything else, that's why. Because they refused to give us not financial, but legal support.
So yeah, I mean, like, I guess that's what I'm saying is that I think having an official response from the committee that the committee doesn't feel that it can accomplish Implementing a referendum question for the April 1st, 2025 ballot due to lack of support regarding legal services.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, I guess we don't necessarily need a motion, but I guess the recommendation, if the committee wants to make a recommendation to delay doing referendum question, you know, that can be the basis for it, but.
And then the figures will change if it's another year.
Okay, well, I guess I can try to take a crack at the motion. People can do it. The reason why I was asking for a motion is I want it so it's in the minutes, the action and a recommendation from the committee.
Yeah.
I think we should have a motion, but I don't know, because there's,
It's very hard to put it.
How about something like this, that we recommend to take no action on the referendum question until such time that we have proper legal and financial impact, something like that.
Okay, it's a motion.
I'm certainly open to input here, but that's,
Well, legal advice. You know, it's, because we're all good folks here, we all would like to be able to just whip one out that could go on the ballot, but we don't know the verbiage.
So I guess what do we have for the, I would agree with the legal piece, but what is the?
I have recommends, questions on the and financial impact.
Yeah,
Say legal support.
Legal support was denied by the board.
Yep.
Let's call it the way it is.
yeah, okay, so I guess, Pat, would you entertain an amendment to your motion of,
I'll entertain anything, Alex.
it's like,
Well, I don't know if you'll be able to read it.
committee recommend that
We take no action.
committee recommends, oh, that one. Okay, recommends to take no action on the spring 2025 ambulance referendum question due to lack of legal support from the village board until such legal support is given and that we have a proper financial background. I guess I was trying to think of the last word. Yeah. I don't know, I'm trying to take a crack at it too, so.
I think that's good. I think it's saying whose fault it was.
Right. Let's put the blame where it belongs, not on this committee.
Right. I agree. Make a strong statement, you know, that's,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be advising the board, and in theory, they should be taking the committee's advice and be engaged, so I agree. So I made that motion to amend Pat's motion. Is Pat second?
I made the original, I can't.
Oh, you can.
Okay, I second.
Okay, and then Pam seconds. So, is everyone in support of that motion? Any further discussion on that? We want to take a vote? Okay, we can take a vote, a roll call vote?
Okay. Alex Vidnick,
Yes.
Pat Kelsdonk,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
yes,
Judy Freeze,
Yes.
Pam Kajak,
Yes.
Terry Lewis Burkett. Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Move on to agenda item 5A, discussion and possible action, RFP for ambulance services. So I had put this on the agenda, kind of forecasting some of the headwinds we were seeing with 2026 ambulance implementation date. I know we've had a couple proposals. At a minimum, I know we've had strong advice from our fire chief and other professionals that we go to RFP rather than just renewing our existing contract, and that we should attempt to go to RFP to plug some of the holes that are in our current contract. So, you know, we obviously have a couple proposals here, but you know, this is an item that the committee could recommend that, or direct the fire department to go to RFP on a contract for ambulance service for at least year 2026.
Or for the contract to 90-day. Opt-out. Yep.
Opt-out. Well, yeah, I just wanted to get this on the agenda so we can kind of give the framework of what we would want to direct the fire department together. The length of term, what, you know, obviously the fire department knows where the holes are in the contract more than we do. I know I've heard of some of the aspects that have been brought up, like, are we charged non-resident rate or resident rate? You know, per call fees. I think there was a few other things in there, but.
Can I ask Alexa a question?
Yeah.
How do you think the care is from Riverside? I don't think we've ever asked you that. Girl, I'm sorry.
I mean, you have to be professional with it, and
Yeah.
Yep.
ultimately,
Make it easier for her. Is it good? Could it be better? Is it bad?
Jesus. Overall, I would say that the care that we see is good. Could there be areas of improvement? Yes. Part of that is due to the holes in our contract. Part of that falls into some other categories that are probably not professionals who disclose to you guys, because that would involve patient matters. HIPAA violations in particular, we need to maintain that. So I think overall the care is good.
Adequate would be fine.
It would. There's always room for an improvement, no matter what you're doing, what job you're doing, what task you're doing. But obviously, there's been poked holes that I think could be major improvement, which is areas that we strive to propose that we could be better or be fixed. But
Thank you.
well, I think that's ultimately a goal of the committee. You know, I know it can be discouraging that there's been so much pushback on the ambulance, but ultimately that should be a goal of all of us, is at least improving our ambulance service, however that might look like, even if it takes longer to implement. You know, this is an opportunity that, you know, us exploring in detail, starting our ambulance service, having the information we have already, I think puts us in a stronger position to negotiate the terms that benefit our residents the most. So I guess that's one piece of, I won't call it naivety, but optimism I'll use on this, that we have accomplished, right? I mean, we now have 2 offers already. And that's just the start. I mean, right? We have Riverside said they would extend their contract. current rates and Safer made an offer. And on top of that, we are in a position where we could go to RFP and request some improvements. I mean, that's
And
That's
you
not
could-
zero.
You could list those improvements that you would like to see made, Alexa?
Yes, the fire chief and I would
Okay.
be able to formally construct changes that we think needs to be implemented in a future contract, whether that, outside of this ambulance service, if it does not work for Kronenwetter Fire Department. If we end up going out for RFP, we will put statements in there to protect this village and the residents that we serve, because ultimately, we're still gonna go out the door the same way or the other. I'm still gonna put on the same pair of pants I do now.
Yep.
But we will be able to have those changes in that RFP to ensure that we're doing the best to protect this village and our residents that we can.
So what direction would you like from the committee and or board in order for you to accomplish that?
So, I think there would need to be some discussions between myself and the fire chief and even some members of the Kronenwetter Fire Department as well. On rewriting what this contract, what we want to see change, what we want to see fixed, and then I believe that has to come back for approval before that goes out for RFP initially. So I think there's some discussions that need to be had in the background, so for right now, I think that question needs to be deferred.
Well, yeah, for the RFP, because you'll be stipulating all the aspects of it. This committee could direct the Kronenwetter Fire Department to draft a RFP proposal, and you could come back with that, and we could recommend that to the board to send out for next month. Because, right, I mean, your department's the expert, right?
Right.
You're the
You see what they do. Yeah.
Maybe you live it day in and day out, so, I mean, I think you're the proper authority to propose the improvements that should be made to protect our residents. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I have another
Yeah,
question.
go ahead. Yeah.
I'm not gonna make a motion.
Yeah.
Has Jody contacted you, Teresa, Tim, any of you since this went out? Because he does say, and we heard it from you and Teresa, that they're supposed to be training with you folks and they haven't been. He says right here, shortcomings is his responsibility. Has he been in contact with you guys since this has been going on? Better?
I cannot speak on behalf of Chief O'Brien in that sense, but me personally, no, and I would agree that Captain O'Brien also has not been contacted. Just to my knowledge, currently, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, oh, okay. You're looking for a motion for the fire department to address, I would, and we can tear it apart once they discuss it. I would think we should have them go through and check the existing contract out. See what you would like changed in there, what you would like added, what you would like taken out, and get that true cost for review before we submit it to the board. And then I think you folks should be real involved in the RFP. I've heard comments that, well, yeah, we don't want them involved. Well, why wouldn't you? That's exactly who we want involved.
Well, yeah, who else would we want involved?
Yeah, right. So, okay, so you need a motion that, I would make a motion that the fire department, first responder should work on the existing contract to groom it the way we need in Kronenwetter, and get it ready for RFPs. Because that doesn't cover it.
I'll just second it so that we can open the discussion on it. So yeah, I think we can request the fire department, I guess, identify the areas of the contract they'd like to see improved, and they could.
Or changes, just changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they could identify those areas and basically draft a RFP to go up based on those changes, right?
Yes.
I mean, for our review, like draft the RFP, we review it, recommend it to the board, hopefully the board sends it out then.
And then us have that 90-day option.
Right, yeah, that would probably be included in that. Because, I mean, our current contract has a 90-day opt-out, right? I mean, I don't know if the
Or
fire
we can
department,
cancel, or is it?
either side, I believe.
Either, I think.
No?
I think it's,
Yeah,
I
either side.
think, I don't know 100%. I think it's either.
That's what I thought it
Just
was.
one side? Is that what you said? Either or.
Either or. I don't know for sure.
How do we get, I don't know how to say this, but how do we incorporate to make sure that if we agree to stay with this contract for another year and a half, that if we need ambulance service today, that we are either residents or non-residents? Because the question I had asked to me was, are you a resident of Kronenwetter? And I said yes, and yet I was billed as a non-resident. And I found out we should have said no, Rothschild, because of the way the contract works.
But the billing would show, I don't think you'd get out of it anyway, because the billing would show your address.
Somehow that has to be straightened out, and I don't
Can I
know.
answer the question?
Yes.
That is something that unfortunately we would not be able to monitor. That falls back to the ambulance provider, their billing company, and their quality assurance team that should be randomly auditing charts to ensure that they're being billed properly. There is human error. It is a tap of a button sometimes, but unfortunately for most people that don't look at an EOB, if they get one in the mail, they wouldn't know otherwise. They're just going to pay what insurance doesn't pick up and move about their day. But that is one thing that we would be definitely diligent to ensure that, being that these are our own residents, that button is getting selected, that we picking up our own residents, and they're getting our own resident fees that we can control. But in terms of that and continuing the contract 1 to 2 years, unfortunately that's outside of our physical control, because we don't do any of the billing or handle any of their documentation that coincides with the
Hopefully
billing.
we'll look at a different company.
But part of the RFPs could address that. That as long as we have a contract with them, we're all considered residents of this ambulance.
And I do believe our current contract is outlining that our residents should be billed as a resident.
Resident.
Yes.
Right.
So that may be one of the holes in the contract we have now. I didn't see it.
I mean, a whole contract could also be what recourse do we have? We don't. If they don't abide by the rules of the contract, the only recourse we have right now is the only thing we can do is cancel the contract, but you can't do that easily because then you don't have any ambulance service to do that. So then, what do? You know, it's kind of a sledgehammer. You can use it, but you can't actually get them to do non-catastrophic, abide by non-catastrophic issues in the contract, I guess, is what I'm saying. That's something that could be improved. I guess the way, like for example, the training, right? They're supposed to train 4 times a year in the contract. You're lucky if they're training our staff once a year. Well, are we gonna cancel the contract over that? And no backup plan, right? And with 90 days, like that makes it, it's a good blanket coverage, like if they just started not responding to calls, for example, or something catastrophic, but over them not training like they're supposed to, well, we're probably not gonna, we're probably gonna call the bluff, like, there's a contract, right? I mean,
If you say we're not gonna pay them for a month because they're not doing it, well, see ya, then what?
right,
Yeah, oh, they know they have a hammer, and that's why we should be going down this road. They know.
so we have a motion to direct the staff to, basically identify the issues they would like to see addressed in the contract, and I guess based off those, would you have like a RFP proposal based off of that? If we were to approve that? I guess I haven't seen the RFP itself. I've seen the contracts, but I don't know how a RFP for ambulance service looks like. Or what.
I would have to also defer that back to Chief O'Brien, being that I was not part of the initial RFP process for our ambulance providers can't pass or recur, and I am not familiar with what that process looks like as well.
I would assume the chief would know how to
She would know.
include those in the RFPs. I think she would, so.
Just a thought, maybe our next meeting, we should have, for lack of a better term, a working session with the fire department and this board. I mean, we basically do now. I mean, it's a two-way conversation. But I think we could go through with them line by line, so we're not sitting up here reading the proposal and then saying, they missed the point. So maybe that could be part of our agenda on this meeting.
Yeah, we can, to look through the RFP and the contract changes they would propose. I still would like them to propose like a summary of all the changes
Oh, yes.
they would like to see, and then we can go from there.
Right.
And how that might impact the RFP. So do you have what you need for direction? I don't know if we need a motion or not on that, I guess, if they know what they're doing, but it doesn't hurt when it's minutized, I guess. New adjective. Think of words as they go. So any further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. So we need a roll call vote on that, so. I guess with that, we have item 6, consideration of items for future agenda. Does anyone have any items for future agenda? Obviously, we'll have this contract changes portion, and then an RFP for ambulance service for 2026. And we can kind of just go from there. Is there anything else people want to discuss? I know we're trying to also work on.
I think it might be a good time to get a really definite staffing cost proposal.
Yes.
That way we can start constructing our question. Maybe at the following meeting, then we can talk about the vehicle. But I think we gotta take it step by step, and let's start with staffing.
Okay. I'm down with that.
The only thing is, if we don't have a vehicle, there's no reason to talk about staff. But we do have to do.
You wanna start with the vehicle? I don't care, but we gotta start putting our numbers together.
Yeah, we have to get the numbers together and get them more solidified than, well, this will work if we do it like this. I agree. I think we should, whether it's vehicle or staffing, I think it'd be easier to do staffing.
Well, I think that's the more critical piece right now, because the vehicle, that's the longest lead time item, but the biggest risk component of the economics is the staffing piece. Or that's the part that we have the least information on. The vehicle, we have, you know, the ambulance and the equipment, we have actual, you know, quotes. And we have a staffing plan, but I guess getting that a little more concrete would be good. I'd agree with that. Is there anything else for items for future agenda? Okay. See, our next meeting is supposed to be Tuesday, December 17th. Does that work for everybody? I know it's holiday season. I know it's a week before Christmas, so.
Is that where you bring us our Christmas presents, Alex?
I may be out of town then. What, Tuesday? No, I won't.
Okay. Well, if anyone has issues with it, you know, feel free to email Jennifer, myself, and we can get out. But we'll just plan on that. With that, I'll move on to item 8.
Also move.
Okay. Got a motion by Rick to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Yep.
Okay, second by Pam. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned, 7:16 p.m. Thank you.